You weigh 6,000 kilograms. Your feet feel the ground not just as pressure, but as sound. Vibrations travel up through your bones from miles away. Another herd, a distant storm, a predator circling something wounded in the dark. You hear the world through your feet before your ears ever process it. This is an African elephant's reality. Every single day. For roughly 60 million years, elephants and their ancestors have walked this earth. They have outlasted ice ages, mass extinctions, and the rise of every apex predator that has ever tried to stop them. And yet, for all that time, for all that weight in intelligence and raw evolutionary success, a single elephant's daily life is more fragile, more emotional, and more socially complex than almost anything else on this planet. Most people imagine an elephant as a symbol, ancient, immovable, almost mythic. But the actual biology behind what an elephant does every day is far stranger, far more tender, and far more surprising than any symbol could hold. So let us reconstruct a day in an elephant's life. Not the dramatic kind. The ordinary kind. Because the ordinary kind turns out to be extraordinary. You wake before sunrise. Not because something startled you, but because your body runs on an internal clock calibrated to the savanna's rhythms. You need to eat. A full-grown African elephant consumes between 100 and 300 kilograms of vegetation every single day. That is not a misprint. Your digestive system is enormous but surprisingly inefficient. You absorb only about 40% of what you eat. So you must eat constantly, for 16 to 18 hours out of every 24, just to maintain your body. You are, in a very real biological sense, a machine built entirely around the act of finding and consuming food. Your trunk leads the way. It contains more than 40,000 individual muscle units, not 40,000 muscles, 40,000 distinct units within a muscular structure that has no bones and no cartilage. It can uproot a tree. It can pick up a single blade of grass. It can sense the chemical signature of water buried 3 meters underground. Researchers at the Amboseli Elephant Research Project, led by Cynthia Moss over more than 5 decades in Kenya, documented how elephants use their trunks to investigate the bones of deceased herd members, gently touching the skulls and tusks of the dead in behaviors that suggest recognition and, many scientists now argue, something that functions very much like grief. That detail matters. Hold it for a moment. You move with your herd now. The herd is led not by the largest animal, not by the strongest, but by the oldest female, the matriarch. She is a living library. In a landmark study published in the journal Animal Behaviour, researchers Karen McComb and Cynthia Moss demonstrated that elephant herds led by older matriarchs showed measurably better survival responses to threats. Herds led by matriarchs over 50 years old were far more effective at distinguishing between the calls of known lions versus unknown lions, and at reading whether a male lion or a female lion was approaching, a critical distinction, because male lions are far more dangerous to elephants. That knowledge is not instinct. It is learned. It is memory. It is passed down through lived experience across decades. Remove the matriarch, and the herd loses its most important survival tool. Your herd moves toward water. Elephants can detect surface water from up to 19 kilometers away, using both their trunk and the vibration-sensitive nerve endings in their feet. Infrasound, sound below the range of human hearing, travels through the ground and the air, carrying information across distances that seem impossible. Researchers Caitlin O'Connell-Rodwell and her team at Stanford University spent years documenting how elephants use seismic communication, pressing their feet into the ground and reading the vibrations sent by other elephants miles away. The Earth itself is a communication network for your species. You are never entirely alone, even when no other elephant is visible. At the Waterhole, something shifts. A young calf, perhaps 18 months old, stumbles. The ground near the edge is unstable. She sinks, begins to panic. Her legs churn. She cannot get purchase on the slick bank. What happens next is not instinct in the simple sense. The females of the herd move immediately. They position themselves at the bank, using their trunks and bodies to guide the calf, to push her, to anchor her. An older female enters the water. She braces. The herd vocalizes, deep, rumbling calls below the range of human hearing. The calf is pulled free. This behavior has been documented repeatedly in wild elephant populations. It is one of the reasons behavioral biologists now classify elephants as one of only a handful of species, alongside great apes, dolphins, and corvids, that demonstrate what researchers call prosocial behavior, acting at personal cost to benefit another individual who is not their own offspring. Frans de Waal, The primatologist whose decades of research on empathy and cooperation in animals transformed our understanding of animal cognition, argued that empathy is not uniquely human. Elephants, he noted, not only recognize distress in others but actively attempt to resolve it. You spend the hottest part of the day in shade. Elephants thermoregulate, manage their body temperature, in ways that are elegantly engineered. Those enormous ears are not simply large. The skin on the back surface of an elephant's ears is threaded with a dense network of blood vessels. Blood flows to the ears flap gently, the blood cools in the surface air, and returns to the core of the body cooler than it left. In extreme heat, an elephant can dump significant heat through this mechanism alone. The ears are, in effect, a biological radiator. The size of an African elephant's ears compared to its Asian cousins is not random. African savanna temperatures run higher, and African elephants evolved correspondingly larger ears to compensate. You mud bathe in the afternoon. This is not leisure. Mud coating the skin blocks the sun's ultraviolet radiation, dries to protect against insects, and, crucially, cools the skin as it evaporates. Elephants also use dust for similar thermoregulation. A behavior that looks playful, even joyful, is in fact precise biological self-maintenance performed with the same regularity as eating or drinking. Evening comes. The herd converges. There is more low rumbling, contact calls, reassurance, the communication of location and status between individuals who can recognize each other by voice alone. Joyce Poole, who has studied elephant communication for over 40 years alongside Cynthia Moss at Ambercelli, catalogued more than 70 distinct elephant vocalizations, many of them inaudible to humans without specialized equipment. Elephants do not have a language in the human sense, but they have a system of communication so rich, so layered, and so deeply social that researchers continue to find new complexity in it every decade. Now comes the counterintuitive twist. The most dangerous thing in an elephant's daily life is not a lion. It is not a drought. It is not a rival male. The most dangerous thing is a decision made by a matriarch with less experience, or, in a fragmented habitat, in a landscape increasingly divided by roads and fences and human settlements, a decision made with incomplete information. Elephants evolved for a world with enormous corridors of movement. Their survival systems assume that they can walk, seasonally, across hundreds of kilometers to find food, water, and suitable social partners. That assumption is now broken across enormous portions of their range. The biology works. The world it was built for is shrinking. You sleep standing. You sleep lying down, sometimes, for brief periods of REM sleep, the deep, dream state sleep required for memory consolidation. Yes, elephants are believed to dream. A 2017 study examining elephant sleep behavior found that wild elephants sleep an average of only 2 hours per night, the least of any land mammal, and spend much of that in a standing doze. Full lying down REM sleep happens only every few days. What happens in those sleeping hours? What the brain does with 50 years of accumulated social knowledge, spatial memory, and emotional experience remains one of the genuinely open questions of animal cognition. It is almost dark now. The herd settles. The youngest calves press close to their mothers and aunts. The matriarch stands at the edge, reading the air, feeling the ground. She is 62 years old. She has survived 2 severe droughts, the death of 3 calves, the loss of her own mother, and the slow disappearance of a waterhole her herd has visited for 4 generations. She holds all of that in whatever an elephant brain uses instead of language. She will use it tomorrow to keep 12 animals alive. You weigh 6,000 kilograms. Your feet feel the ground not just as pressure, but as the accumulated memory of every path your herd has ever walked. This is what an elephant's life is actually like.